ロボ忍者デザイン
Here we have this Hirameki book by Peng and Hugh, and the book is basically a collection of watercolor collage, I would say. It's meant to encourage you to do ink drawings over the top of it. And I've always felt like you look at a clump of clothes on the floor or some design in a towel or a rug or something, you see something else. I've always felt like I can see little faces and animals and stuff in there. Maybe it's just overactive imagination. I don't know. I think we're also wired as human beings to kind of see that stuff. It's kind of a fight or flight response. To kind of recognize threats. I think that's part of it. But here I'm using I believe it's a Kuretake brush pen. So it's just like a normal pen, but it's got a little brush tip at the... So there's some flexibility with your line weight you can use, and they have different brush lengths, so you can get different weights of line. And I'm just kind of going in and drawing what I see. But this is kind of the backdrop for this video. I want to talk about something a little bit different. So when I was a kid, I just remembered this kind of out of the blue. I don't remember what caused me to remember this thing that had happened. But I remember I was driving down Johnson Street. It was probably in the Lumina, and my mom and dad were in the front. My sister was in the back with me. I'm not sure where my little brother was. Might have been at a friend's house or something. I must have been maybe 12 or 13, and my dad was the one driving. Now at the time, my mom she'd been on this like 10-year kick of really enjoying Twizzlers, the licorice, the red licorice specifically. And there was a guy driving next to us. I think he had sunglasses on, and he just had the biggest bag you could get of red Twizzlers. And he was eating Twizzlers while he was driving. And I don't know if my mom pointed it out, that she's like, oh, he's got Twizzlers. Or if my sister noticed first, I don't remember which. But what ended up happening is my sister rolled her window down, and this is back when you had manual. Maybe that car had power windows. I'm not sure, but it could have very possibly had manual windows on it. But anyway, she got her window rolled down. Whether my dad did it or she did it, I'm not sure. And she stuck her hand out the window and kind of did the little duck mouth thing, where you kind of do the little crab claw thing with your hand out the window, like, hey, can I get a piece, And the guy stuck his hand out the window, and hey, I think he had maybe 2 or 3 pieces in there, and he handed them to her. And my dad was like, oh, I gotta slide over, because now we're going like 45 miles an hour probably, and they had to kind of do this maneuver where my dad had to speed up a little bit, and the guy had to move over, and then he handed the licorice off to my sister, and then she got licorice. And it's just such a wild thing post-COVID to think about receiving candy barehanded from a total stranger, a complete stranger that you don't even know. It's borderline unthinkable now. And that's not really the point of the story. The point of the story is my dad's reaction, which is, that's like, he was just elated at the fact that is like the generosity of a stranger. There was the cost to him is very minuscule, but he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to give my sister the licorice, right? And he was just really, I think, pleased with that. I'm going to talk about making donations here for a second, and I want to put it in context a little bit. I'm talking about donations to organizations, whether they be local or national or international, if it's like UNICEF all the way down to your local food bank or animal shelter, whatever, wherever you're making your donations. I'm talking about donations going to people in need or animals in need. I'm not talking about donations going to your favorite Twitch streamer or YouTube person. The other thing my dad talked about a lot was if you're going to donate, you should do it. There should be a couple qualifications when you make a donation, whether it be of your time or of your money or of some other resources. And those qualifications are, it should be done as anonymously as you can do it. You shouldn't tell anybody. You shouldn't be doing it so you get your name put up somewhere and people recognize you. That shouldn't be the main driver. I know there's philosophical debate on this. And the end result of that debate is that it doesn't really matter why you're doing it, because the end result is the people in need of the donation get the donation, and that's what matters. But he strongly felt that you should give anonymously so nobody knows. And I really like that. I think that it should be done that way too. And the other qualification that he said you should give when you donate is that it should sting a little. And by that, he meant that if you're donating money specifically and it doesn't pinch your budget a little bit, then you didn't give enough. And I kind of like that too. And I think that's really shown where people, based on their percentage of income, the poorer you are, the more money you are to give within a percentage of your income, which means that poor people and rich people donate the same amount of money, just about. Maybe it's not even that close, but the whole point is that people with less money tend to donate a larger percentage of their money, and people with more money donate way less. And so you see that people who struggle with money tend to give more of their money away to causes, which is interesting. And I think that is because people who struggle understand that there are people who are struggling even more. And maybe they've gotten to a place where they aren't struggling as much and they want to help somebody else. And people who do not struggle at all don't, and haven't in a long time, or maybe have never struggled, don't understand how hard that can be for people. On that kind of note of giving anonymously, I was on a job site recently in Cincinnati. I work for a company that does stained glass windows for churches. And I'm kind of the guy who tears out the old windows and takes them apart and can put them back together and reinstall them. Stained glass windows and storm glass too. The exterior, interior. And I was on this site and was kind of working, kind of wrapping up one side of the church while the other guys that I work with were on the other side of the church, starting in on those windows and getting that stuff wrapped up as well. So I was kind of doing some finishing touches, mostly paint. And there's a decorator there who works for the same company I work for. But I've never worked with them before, because the thing about decorators is they go on the road, and they'll be on the road for anywhere from 6 weeks to, like 9 months. They'll stay on a job site and just keep working. Because you got to think how much time it would take to paint a whole church. It's an insane amount of work. And so this guy offered to give me a hand with painting up the frames on this side. So I was like, sure, yeah, if you want to, that'd be great. So we get to painting, and I've got lots of stuff on my checklist here that I got to get done. It's not just the painting. It's the painting came after the installation of this trim, and we gotta caulk that in there and nail it in, and all these different processes, right? And so the paint is just one thing that I've got to do before I can do these other things on my checklist. And we got to painting, we got all the stuff painted, and I set my brush down, and he kind of knew that I was transitioning off to something else, because I set my brush down, and I'm usually very diligent about washing out my brush. I don't think, there's been times where I've definitely wrapped my paintbrush in plastic, and then been like, well, I'm going to wash it back at the shop, because there's no good place to wash it here, or I just don't want to take the time right now, and it's wrapped in plastic, it'll be fine. But I can't remember the last time I dipped a brush in paint and just left it out in the open air. So usually I'm very diligent about either wrapping my brush right away, or most often going to clean my brush. And for whatever reason, I set my brush down on top of the paint can. It was just, full of wet paint. And I just went on to the next thing. I just wasn't focusing on what I was doing in that moment. And it happens, it happens. So it was just a mistake. It's not even a big deal. But what happened was, the guy I was working with, the decorator, he came behind me, and he saw my wet brush, and he knew I was done, because he saw that I had transitioned onto some other work. If I was, installing some more trim somewhere else, or doing something totally different. And so he knew that I was done with that brush. And so what he did is he took my brush, and he went down and he washed it for me. And I came back, and I was like, oh, I remembered. I'm like, I didn't do anything with that brush. And I ran over to get it. And there it was sitting right where I left it, but it was clean, and I knew I didn't clean it. And so this decorator had taken my brush, cleaned it, and put it back exactly where it belonged. And in that moment, I just thought about how if one of my coworkers had left a brush out, I might not clean it for him. And I might razz him about it a little bit. And I just like the way this guy handled this. He just saw something. This decorator, he did this because it was the right thing to do in the moment. And I didn't see him do it, so he kind of did it anonymously. It didn't really, it didn't really take him any extra time, really. But he didn't point out the fact that I made a mistake. He didn't make a big deal about how, I would say something to the effect of somebody else of like, oh, don't worry, don't worry, buddy, I can wash this brush out for you. I got it. I'm washing brushes anyway. Even if I'm not, right? And so this guy did the small thing. He didn't point out the fact that I made a mistake. He didn't point out the fact that he did it and wanted a thank you or anything. He just did the right thing and went about his day. And I don't know if it's Mahatma Gandhi. It's that guy where it's like, be the change that you want to, be the change that you want to see in the world. And I think before you can be the change that you want to see in the world, meaning that if you want the world to be a more peaceful place, then you yourself have to be a more peaceful person. Or whatever change you want to see. Have it start with you. But I think there's something that happens even before that change, which is you have to be able to see it. You have to be able to recognize it. And if you don't see it and you don't recognize it, it's going to be hard. It's going to be very difficult for you to make that change. And so that simple little act of cleaning out my brush for me and not asking for a favor, not asking for anything in return or any kind of recognition, really kind of flipped a switch in me as it pertains to how I work. And it's, like I said, it's not that big a deal, but rather than, this guy did this out of the kindness of his heart, not asking for any recognition, not correcting me, not pointing out that I made a mistake, for no other reason than it was the right thing to do in the moment. And I recognize that. And I did go back and I did point it out and I did thank him, because I think it's important to point that stuff out. When somebody does something good and right, to go back and say, hey, I really appreciate that. And so I've tried to instill this into my acts, where it's not driven by, oh, someone is going to really say thank you for this, or someone's going to really notice. It's more driven by that in this moment, this is the right thing to do. No matter how small or how big, it doesn't matter if nobody notices. I know it's right. And also not coming from a place of moral superiority that this makes me a better person, or I'm a better person for doing this. It's just like, this is the right thing to do. And so I'm going to take care of this, because someone needs to. And it doesn't really matter who does it. It doesn't matter if the other person forgot and now I have to do it. Someone has to do it. And it might as well be me. So that's kind of the very scattered ideas that I've been thinking about recently in my own life, and trying to roll that into my intentions behind work and getting things done. So hope you didn't I hope you enjoyed this kind of rant, I guess. I don't know if I'd really call it a rant. This kind of meandering through some things I've been thinking about lately as we go kind of into this holiday season. Just kind of thinking about that there's more ways to give. There's more ways to give than just your money. You can give your time, your effort, your attention. All of those things are ways to give to others. And it can make the world a better place, I guess. Maybe that's a little overblown, but I know that I'm always surprised at how good it makes me feel when I donate. And I don't donate as much as I should. I should donate more. But I get why people do it, because it does make you feel good. But that shouldn't be the reason. But in any event, if you enjoyed this at all or got anything out of it, I would love for you to share it with someone else who you think would benefit from this. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the stuff. Thank you so much for listening to this and watching all the way to the end. We're just going to let the music play on the way out here. And I will catch you in the next one. But before I forget, I just want to say a special thank you to Carl Casey at White Bat Audio for the music on this and a lot of my other videos. You can find him on YouTube. Thank you, Carl.
Robo Ninja Design